Welcome to another episode of Real Wealth Podcast. I am here with Mike Christensen and Brittany French, and we are today talking about Passed On Outdoor Mentors. They're a nonprofit, 501c3, and they help with getting, especially urban youth, the ability or the chance to get out and hunt. Brittany, you were just sharing with me that's one of the first things to go when it comes to discretionary spending. And it's a lost art. It's a lost practice that, a lot of youth don't even have the chance to do. And so that's what this organization's all about. My boys have benefited from it with doing some sporting clays, target shooting, which I'm so grateful for, to be able to give them consistency and opportunity. And Mike, you founded the organization, right? You're the founder.
Right. I started working with Big Brothers and Big Sisters back in 2002. They hired me to be their director of outdoor mentoring.
Okay.
Big Brothers, Big Sisters saw a need to get more men involved. Typically, across the nation with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, about 75% of the kids on the waiting list are boys. And they saw outdoor activities as being a vertical market approach to recruiting more men to get involved with mentoring. And the program took off from there. We started with Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and then we spun off as a separate nonprofit in 2006. And we've been rolling ever since. And then in 2019, I hired Brittany to head up a new effort that we put together, which is reaching out to the shooting sports teams across the country. We saw what was going on with trap shooting here in Kansas. The program was growing rapidly. I think this last year they had 137 high schools across Kansas that had trap teams. And so I hired Brittany to say, hey, let's go see if we can get these kids out hunting. Most of them all had hunter ed. They all had shotguns, but we didn't see anybody that was taking them hunting. So I turned that over to Brittany, and she's been rolling like crazy.
Wow. Yeah. I didn't realize until today that there was a Big Brothers, Big Sisters connection to it.
Mm-hmm. That's where we started. Yep. So I've had 3 little brothers, and when I got matched with kids through the Big Brothers program, I told them, all we're going to do is hunt and fish. We're not going to movies. We're not making cookies. We're not sitting around playing video games. We're going to go hunting and fishing, and that's it. And all 3 of the kids that I mentored are now avid outdoorsmen, and we've seen that with a lot of the kids. We've got volunteers in our program today. Kenny is one of the coaches for the trap team. He was one of the littles in our program way back when. And it's really rewarding to see that kind of thing happen. And, of course, that's what the Big Brothers program is all about, is showing kids that there are avenues, other avenues in life that they can pursue. And it's been really rewarding to see that. But, yeah, we got our start with Big Brothers, Big Sisters.
Yeah, that's wild. And that makes so much sense that there was that initial need of how do we get more men involved and how do we appeal to those that we want to attract. And that makes a lot of sense as to why it even came up at all.
Yeah. We had a lot of fun with it.
Cool.
Yeah, I would say there is probably a very serendipitous moment in time where the Department of Wildlife and Parks released their first youth upland season back in 1999.
Yep, way back when.
Right. So imagine these collective forces and visionary folks in our community, leaders at Big Brothers, Big Sisters, folks in the Department of Wildlife and Parks, some folks in the police department here in Wichita. How do we capitalize on this opportunity? And kind of was the brainchild of, let's take kids hunting. Why not? We can run our dogs as mentors early before everybody else can in the season, but also these kids are going to be able to experience something they've never been able to experience before. So that's always really fun to share about our start. And then, fast forward, Mike was asked to start the program officially, and, just thousands and thousands of kids have benefited from that.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing with the organizational growth, and then some of the, I guess, approaches you're bringing to how you're growing it, how you're managing it, because really a lot of nonprofits just don't make it. Mm-hmm. Okay. And what are you doing that is different, as far as you can tell, that is leading to success in this space?
Boy, that's a tough one. We have been around for a long time. Like I say, we spun off from Big Brothers and Big Sisters in '06. And, most of the support for our program has come from the outdoor community. So we've been able to keep this rolling. We still partner closely with Big Brothers and Big Sisters every chance we get. We took a bunch of kids fishing from the Big Brothers program here just a couple of weeks ago. But it's all about giving these kids opportunities, and I think folks in the outdoors just gravitate to supporting those kinds of efforts. When we took a look at what was happening with the high school trap shooting, Brittany had volunteered for us for several years as a mentor through the Big Brothers program, and she had expressed interest in getting involved with this. And when I saw things going with the trap programs, it just seemed like and having been involved in the national recruitment, retention, and reactivation efforts, it just seemed like a natural thing to do. These kids all had hunter ed, they all had shotguns, but there wasn't any program focused on giving them opportunities to get out and hunt. So I turned that ball over to Brittany, and she took and ran with it.
So recruitment, retention, and reactivation.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Brittany, why don't you share a little bit about the R3 initiative that you guys are working on and break that down?
Yeah, so you kind of touched on the importance of R3, introducing the podcast of there being generational turnover in participation in the outdoors, whether it be hunting, fishing, or even shooting sports, right? Baby boomers are aging up and out of this sport due to age, due to limitations, you name it, relocating in life. And they historically have produced children who have not gravitated toward the outdoors. No particular reason why. Maybe access, maybe funding. I mean, there's no one given answer that fits this whole population, right? But that kind of started back in the early 2000s, a movement called R3, which really was R2, morphed into R3 because of the focus we need to put on recruiting, retaining, and reactivating all of those folks, not just hunters, not just anglers or target shooters, all of them at once, to kind of backfill that deficit. What that looks like, though, is if we have by the masses a generational turn and folks not buying hunting licenses and ammo and firearms, our country looks very different. Conservation looks very different. And I don't know if that's that's an image I want to see. And we certainly are trying to help combat that by recruiting and retaining kids in the outdoors.
So your husband's a financial advisor.
Yes, yeah.
And he also started a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So do the 3 R's carry over to what he's doing? Or is that totally different?
I would say it's probably different. However, if we want to talk like financial literacy and sustainability for nonprofits, like that is huge. And I don't think many nonprofits talk about the volatility in that space. Everybody loves the mushy stories. I even told you that before we got started. Like, yeah, let's tell stories because there's so many good ones. But I mean, there is a lot that goes into recruiting new donors, retaining donors, and, reactivating your lapsed donors, who used to give to you but aren't anymore. What's going on? Is it the economy we're in? Is it how we're marketing, to them and what we're doing? And how do we go find new folks to come on board and support us? So there's a lot of that certainly correlates nonprofit to nonprofit in the R3 space.
Okay. Is this a transferable skill, the R3 space for other nonprofits, or is it mainly just R3, so I understand it, recruiting, retaining, and reactivating. Is that something all of them should be doing?
Well, I think we can certainly take it and apply it to all of our missions, right? I would say it's specifically started in the outdoor industry, right?
Okay.
But if you were to think about who your beacons in your mission, right? What's your actual effort? You should certainly be looking at those things. What kids are we serving? If you're serving kids, what clients are you working with? Are there different ones you need to be onboarding? Can you serve the ones you are serving better? I think you can probably apply it to a lot of the work all of us do.
Pretty universal.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the growth you're experiencing, because it's a lot more than I would have ever anticipated to hear about. And it's not just happening here in Kansas.
Yeah.
Right. It's been really, really exciting. And when I first started looking at what was going on with trap shooting, I mean, nationwide, it's just exploding in high schools across the country. And I thought, well, gosh, this is an area where we could recruit kids. And I was basically just looking at Kansas at that time. And Brittany hired on in the first year. She spent a lot of time getting to know all the trap teams in Kansas, and she did organize 59 activities that fall. And the next year we did 127. And the next year we brought some other coordinators on board, and we did 235 events. And we expanded to Iowa, and we did over 500 events last year. And now we've just signed a contract with the Wisconsin DNR and hired a program coordinator up there. I mean, we're looking at somewhere north of 600 events this year, and continuing to grow in the future. We're starting to get attention from other wildlife agencies across the country. Everybody's looking for how they're going to address R3 and how do we recruit and retain and reactivate new hunters. We're just one piece of that puzzle. There are other groups that are looking at how do we recruit adults, how do we find kids, the millennials and the Gen Xers, and how do we get them involved? Mm-hmm. And that's different from what we're doing, because we're focused strictly on kids in the high school and college age and giving them opportunities. But Brittany's just done an outstanding job of building up what we've got going and putting the processes in place and building the infrastructure so that we can take this and scale it and replicate it to other states and areas.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to keep doubling like that?
We'd love that.
I don't know that we can keep doubling, but I don't see any slowdown in the growth. This year we're going to go from 5 to 6, maybe 700, so we're not going to quite double this year. But we haven't added any new coordinators until just now. We're just getting started in Wisconsin. But, we're hoping to move into some other states over the next 2 years. We got a couple of states that have expressed interest in having us start our program there. But that all comes down to funding, because we have to pay for a coordinator and we have to pay for these events and do all this work. So it's all a dollars and cents thing, just like every other business is.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Are you getting partnership from the states on helping with overhead and program coordination?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's going to look very different state to state. Just speaking at a Kansas level, we don't get funding from the Department of Wildlife and Parks, and that's okay. A lot of that is because of limitations in what money they do have to give. If you look at places like Iowa, they have maybe a little bit more funding to give, so we get some funding from them. If you look at places like Wisconsin, they have a lot of PR dollars to steward to folks like us and other individuals who are trying to put program on the ground to make a difference in the outdoors. So we do get, I would say, more substantial funding from some of these states that have a more vibrant hunting and fishing, target shooting population across their state individually. And that kind of looks differently too. There's being a nonprofit, we're used to writing grants, pitching our mission and asking for corporate sponsor, for DNR situations, which is Department of Natural Resources for those who don't know. We put a bid in, which is basically like, hey, we want this much money. Here's what we're going to do with it. And they just say, here you go, if you're awarded, which is pretty wild to us because it's never really come that easy. But it just goes to show, what the scalability of our program could look like in each state and how much value, people in the DNR state agencies are putting on that.
Yeah, and on that note, I was at a Startup Tech Kansas, I think is what it was called, conference yesterday, and it was really interesting. We're talking about financing, and there's a piece here of, it makes sense to start off with a little bit of money and grow it organically, because you can figure out what works, what doesn't work, and not just wasting resources. So that's legit, but it's got to feel nice to actually get the money when you ask for it. And be like, this is a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Yes.
When we first started, way back in 2002, the National Shooting Sports Foundation has stepped up with a huge grant to get us started with Big Brothers and Big Sisters. It hasn't been quite that easy since then, but we're seeing more folks stepping up to the plate, and we're hoping to get more corporate sponsorships and make this thing go.
Cool.
It's it takes roughly about $125,000 to fund a coordinator in a given state. So that's our goal. And we have some parameters. We say a coordinator can do X number of events a year, and so the math is pretty simple. Give me $125,000, and we can do another coordinator, and we can put on this many more events and get this many more kids outdoors.
Okay. what's the economic cost to get one more kid out there who wouldn't have been able to go hunt?
I think we're averaging about $200 per event per kid.
Okay.
So to get a kid outdoors, and that's including insurance and the staff time and everything that's involved. But it costs us about $200 to get a kid in the field.
Yeah, there's a lot of backlogged information there. So as a program and how we operate, we have these great folks called program coordinators on the ground who are doing the brute force of our grassroots effort, right? They are connecting with landowners. They're finding kids, whether it be through shooting sports teams, whether it be through 4-H groups, youth groups, you name it. If there's kids out there who are 11 years of age and hunting, our coordinators are seeking them out actively because that's who we should serve. That's who we want to serve. And then they're also finding people like you, Mike, who are passionate about the outdoors, who want to see their kids get involved and equipping them, empowering them to become mentors for us. So there's a lot of time that goes into that. But then there's also the back end, liability insurance. That's pretty important, right? Like, we're not going to have a program without that. We have a CRM system where we can put all these things together to where it becomes a uniform, streamlined process so these kids can sign up efficiently. Their parents know what's going on. Everybody's in communication. So all of these events we plan get put on the ground without a hitch. I mean, there's just no hiccups along the way. We're not stumbling through planning one event, and that's what allows us to plan multiple events. So, I mean, if you'd ask a lot of other folks, they'd probably say $200 is pretty expensive per kid per hunt. If you go out there and hunt as an adult, you're probably going to pay $500, right?
Sure,
like if I go book a preserve hunt somewhere, I'll probably pay $500 for one person, maybe more.
Maybe a lot more.
Yeah. So that $200 mark is pretty realistic, especially when we're providing it for free for them. And when I say free, by fundraising to be able to provide that for free to them.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of the unique things about our program is that we don't charge these kids to participate at all. We ask them to buy their licenses and fees, but that's about it. This next weekend is the pre-rut antlerless hunt in Kansas. And I think we have upwards of 70 different deer hunts set up for kids across Kansas. So we're going to have, and again, we're able to do that because we've got program coordinators and we've got the CRM system and the technology in place that lets us do that efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that conversation initially may have been like with the insurance company. So you're going to have kids with guns that are 11, 12, 13, walk in at night or in the dark, get set up, go up in a
shooting
tree
at
stand.
moving targets.
I mean, they must have had a hard time getting their head around that.
It took me about 6 months to find anybody that would write a policy.
I bet it did.
And I think we can comfortably say every time we get an email from our company, we kind of hold our breath like, oh no, what is this?
Yeah, but that is something that could take the whole program down.
Well, certainly.
One bad lawsuit, one bad situation.
Yep.
Yeah.
But over 21 plus years, we've had no problems. We've had no issues. It's been, and again, kids in the field with the mentors is probably the safest thing out there. Sure. If you look at the trap shooting programs, they have thousands of kids shooting, and there's no accidents. There's no injuries. There's not a sprained ankle. There's not a blown knee. There's not a concussion. There's nothing like you have with traditional high school sports. No injuries at all with the shooting sports. And we're working real hard to make sure that we do that with the hunting side of things as well. And it's going very good.
Yeah.
I always like to tell people it's, talking about youth and guns, right? Like that's always in the headlines. How do we not allow access to kids to firearms? And I think that's kind of a disservice, right? Because it's not if they're going to be around firearms, it's when they will be around a firearm in their life. How do they feel responsible and educated to remove themselves from that situation, go report it to somebody else, and or take an active role, And I love that about our kids hunting is they can call other kids out who they're hunting with. Hey, bud, your muzzle's not pointed in a safe direction. I don't like it. So can you please fix it? Or I'm going to go tell this mentor. Better yet, the mentors are actively overseeing all of these activities to where they can say, hey, like we're not getting on you to be mean. We're getting on you to be safe because we want you to enjoy this for the rest of your life. And one false move can take that away from you and a lot of others, and that's just not okay. So the responsibility we're passing on to this generation it's above and beyond just like showing them how to work a firearm, right? Like they're truly taking the weight of that opportunity and knowing and executing that they are the only one responsible for it. And that's pretty big for a 12-year-old. I mean, you've got boys that are around that age, right?
Yep. Liam just turned 12.
Yeah, and they're a great example of what it looks like. You know, they could be horsing around and having fun, but the moment they put that gun in their hand, they are dialed in. They know.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think maybe an analogy is you can always have bad actors or, whether we're talking about youth or adults or whatever, but it always comes down to the person using it, what they're trained in, what their intentions are.
Yep.
And I know that every time I've seen the kids, my boys, especially with the mentors or whoever's teaching them how to target shoot, how to whatever, safety is number one. And so that's a huge reassurance of like, hey, you've been around long enough to see, hey, here's how this can get unsafe. Let's stay safe. Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we say the words muzzle, action, trigger often, right? Where's your muzzle pointed? Is your action open? And your finger should never be on the trigger until you're ready to either break a target or shoot at your target, whether it be a deer or a pheasant, whatever it might be. And quite frankly, if you're doing all of those things right, there will be no accidents.
Right.
There's no room for accidents if you're doing that right.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the lessons learned or learning that has happened, whether it's related to the nonprofit or just personally. Like, what are some life lessons you guys have learned along the way?
I feel like you could run down a whole bunch of different avenues with this one. I mean, I'll share just some personal experiences with being a mentor. So Mike mentioned I got involved back in 2015. So I think I was 21 at the time. Pretty green, still in college, taking classes, playing softball, in a very different stage of life than I am now, certainly. But I think I underestimated the value in serving kids at that time in my life. I always loved being around kids. I loved organizations that served kids. I even, casted vision. Like, I'd love to just be part of an organization that worked with kids. So certainly had that in my blood. I think God put that on my heart. But the moment you start really working with kids in the outdoors, something really cool happens. And I don't know if I can give it justice or do it justice in explaining it, but these kids just, they unplug. They look to you, and like all of a sudden everything that they're worried about dealing with at home just falls away, and they are just dialed in. I don't know how many times we've been in a blind or walking to a location to hunt, and there's, tree limbs rubbing together, and kids are freaking out because they've never heard that before. Right? Or they hear something scurrying across the ground, and they think, oh, is that Chewbacca coming through the woods? Jokingly, I'm like, no, that's just wildlife, and it's natural. And all of a sudden you just realize the privileges. I've certainly been steward in life, and how often those get misplaced on these kids. And so it's a great privilege to be able to do that. And I think when we finally step out of our box of being uncomfortable, right? Like, how are we qualified to mentor? Like, I didn't take a class on it. I didn't go to school for it. Like, I had some mentors in my life at a young age, but I couldn't really remember them teaching me this is the playbook for, mentoring a new child. You just have to try it. And all of a sudden you find yourself in these positions where that kiddo is mentoring you pretty drastically in life, right? Teaching you about things that actually matter, showing you how to look at worldly problems that you thought were one way, but were completely different, right? So I think that's probably one of the best things I've learned, is just being able to be an active listener in mentorship and realizing what those kids can actually do for us. That's pretty powerful.
So who's been the biggest mentors in your life?
Well, this guy right here, for sure, Mike Christensen. Absolutely. I mean, and so this is funny. There's a Facebook post that always pops up right about this time of year, maybe a month ago. I mentored one of the first hunts with him, and I've posted on Facebook, man, I love this program. I would love to do this in the future. If I could do this full time, I would. But truly, like, that set the ball in motion for me. Like I said, I loved working with kids. I love the space. And it just took someone like Mike to say, well, come along with me. And that's what it was. I was interning at Big Brothers Big Sisters at the time. not really giving back to a lot of kids. I was matched at the time, but that was about it. He goes, well, why don't you come take some kids hunting? I need some more ladies to take these young girls out. So I thought, well, okay, I can try that. And I mean, drastically changed the projection of my life, certainly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike?
Go ahead and follow that up, Mike.
Well, it was really interesting. You know, when I took the job with Big Brothers Big Sisters, I really didn't know much about them. The first hunt that we did with Big Brothers Big Sisters in 09, or in 99 rather, I had a neighbor that said, hey, you're involved with these outdoor groups. Can you find some volunteers to take some kids out on the first upland season that they had for youth in Kansas? And I said, sure, but I didn't know anything about Big Brothers Big Sisters. I'd never worked with kids underprivileged like that before. Of course, I raised two boys. They went to scouts, they went to soccer, they went in karate and all those kind of things. But I never had any interaction with kids that were being served by organizations like Big Brothers and Big Sisters. And when we did our first hunt, it was an upland hunt, and we took some kids out pheasant hunting. And I figured, now these 13, 14-year-old kids, they're going to walk our tail off. We're not going to be able to keep up. But what was shocking, we walked 2 fields, and these kids were physically done. I mean, they couldn't go to another field. I was walking along with this one young man. He was a little pudgy, but he wasn't, wasn't fat or anything. He was just a little on the pudgy side, a little out of shape. And he's red in the face, and he's huffing and puffing. And I said, do you want me to carry your gun for you? And he said, oh, yeah, please. But the thing that struck me, when we got done with the hunt, and we were talking about it, and everybody was talking about the birds they shot and everything, every one of those kids wanted to go again. They were physically exhausted, and they couldn't wait to go again. And that really kind of struck things, saying, boy, there might be something to this. This was pretty cool.
Yeah, it goes to show, like, setting up events for kids. I feel like we all have to think we have to have these unrealistic expectations and these standards of shooting a trophy buck or hitting a bag limit of pheasants. They just simply want an invitation and the opportunity to ask questions and experience something they've never experienced before, because that's what happens every time you go outdoors. I don't care how many times you've been, you learn something new, you see something new every time you go. And so imagine it being such a green kiddo going out there. I mean, you can see their heads explode sometimes. Like, wow, I had no idea that was a thing. I had no idea my hips would be burning so badly trying to trunk through this thick grass, upland hunting. I can't carry my gun anymore. My arms are tired. They've just never experienced that before. But the important thing there is that they just have an invitation to go. They have the opportunity to go.
And it's really fun to watch these kids when you when you put a gun in a kid's hand that's not been around guns very much, the self-confidence that it builds in those kids and the responsibility that they start to feel, you can see the change just right then and there. It's really amazing. Kids are capable of a lot more than what I think a lot of people give them credit for being able to do. And again, when you put a gun in a kid's hand, especially in today's society where guns kind of have a 4-letter word meaning to them, it's a big thing for these kids. I'm putting a gun in this kid's hand, and I'm trusting him not to shoot me. And I mean, that's a big thing for kids. And the responsibility they take and the self-confidence they come away from that with really translates into a lot of other things in their life and makes things better for them. They walk into school the next day and look what I did. Mm-hmm. Look what I did. Pretty special stuff.
Yeah.
So do you think it has more to do with who's putting the gun in their hand or the trust that is required to put the gun in their hand?
I think that there's a lot of both. I mean, certainly with our program, we're working with mentors who love the outdoors and that kind of thing. It's a certain type of individual that's working with these kids. But just putting the gun in their hands and trusting them with, they're going to be safe with that. That's a big thing for kids.
Yeah. You mean I can be trusted to be responsible?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, in today's society, there's not enough of that, I don't think.
No.
There's not enough of it. I'm on the older side of things, so things were different when I was growing up, but I don't think kids accept the same type of responsibility or have the opportunity to accept the same type of responsibility that I did when I was a kid. I was driving tractor when I was 12 years old, plowing fields. Mm-hmm. You don't see that as much today. And that's a lot of responsibility then. You
Yeah.
guys trusted me to plant his crop. So
Yeah. And just then the ownership and pride that comes along with taking that first step, right? I don't know if you've ever been beside a kid who's ever shot their first deer or shot their first pheasant and that dog brings it back. I mean, truly, it's electric. They're just like vibrating with energy of positivity. And the moment you get back in the truck, they are on their phones, they are Snapchatting, they are FaceTiming their parents. Look what I did, look what I'm bringing home. And that confidence, I don't think can be given to them any other way than just allowing them the chance to go fail, but also learn and then find success. And it's pretty special. Mike has a really good story. I'm going to make him tell it because I think it's important. I think it's really important for people to hear. And I think it also turns the table on hunting can be seen as a pretty lucrative sport, right? So we talked about disposable income. If you don't have it, you're probably not going to be hunting much, right? If you do, you could spend a pretty good penny in this sport, whether it's being on buying licenses, firearms, ammo, paying outfitters to take you across country, right? Like you can spend as much as you want to, but for some of these kids, just the opportunity to put protein in their freezer is pretty profound. And Mike has a really good story about that. And I want him to tell it because it's really important. And I think really paints a landscape to the main reason why we need this program is it's not about shooting a trophy buck. It's truly about teaching principle and responsibility.
all right. And my voice will probably break as I tell this because it happens every time I do. But I had a guy, when I was working at Big Brothers, had a guy call me in, and he had heard me on a radio show talking about our program, and he called up and he said, Mike, I heard your story about what you're doing, and he said, God spoke to me and said I needed to get involved. And I haven't had a lot of folks that I've met that God talked to like that, so I didn't bother calling him back. But he was pretty persistent and sent me an email and finally got me on the phone. And because I was working through Big Brothers and Big Sisters, I said, okay, listen, he lived up in the Kansas City area. I said, go to the Big Brothers office, sign up as a mentor, and they'll match you up with a kid and you can go hunting. And Big Brothers does a great job of screening all their volunteers. Mm-hmm. So I thought, if this guy's a bit on the loony side, then they'll get him screened out and we won't have anything to worry about. So, but he calls me up later, and he gets matched with a little kid named George. And Bruce was the guy that called me, and Bruce took this kid on every hunting opportunity that I provided. Mm-hmm. I mean, he lived up in the Kansas City area. He took him on to pheasant hunts in Abilene. We did a pheasant hunt in Garden City. He drove across the state to take this kid on a pheasant hunt. And, I mean, every opportunity that I had, Bruce was signing up George for. And shortly after they had been matched for a while, George came home with a report card. Mm-hmm. And it said, the principal said, we don't know George anymore. George is completely changed. Mm. The confidence, the self-assuredness that he was showing in school, it was a different kid. Mm-hmm. And Bruce belonged to a hunting club up there, and they had a lease, and they had this big 9-point buck on trail camera. And the guys that had the lease, they'd tried archery, they tried muzzleloader, they tried nobody had managed to harvest that buck. And Bruce asked if it was okay if he took George out, and they said, yeah, and by the way, because he was just going to harvest a doe. You just wasn't, most of the hunts we do for deer, we just start out harvesting does. But they said, if that big buck comes out, you have George take a shot at it. Well, sure as world, that morning, this big buck comes out and George harvested. Wow. So it was a big deal. I mean, everybody was all excited about it. And they went back and they George his family didn't have the wherewithal to take it to a processor. So Bruce took it to his house and they butchered the deer, and they were grinding up some of the meat in the burger. And George asked him, he said,
Well, it's a powerful story.
I'll let you finish it.
Oh, no, you got to finish it. You got it.
The kid says, would this be good in Hamburger Helper? And Bruce said, well, yeah, it'd be great. Mm-hmm. The kid said, boy, that's that'll be really good. He said, we've been eating hamburger helper for months and haven't had any meat to put in it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's...
Yeah. Wow.
Incredibly impactful. I mean,
Wow.
the cracking in your voice, the emotion there is authentic, you know, and it's just the reality that so many of these kids face in living in poverty, right? Is that, you know, you and I, Mike, don't have to worry about Mike as well. Don't have to worry about, we have chicken at home. We have hamburger at home. We have resources to go to the store if we don't have that at home to cook for the evening. A lot of these kids, a lot of these families just don't. I mean, they just don't have the access to the income to go purchase it. And they certainly don't have the experiences and opportunities that George was awarded to go out and actually harvest this deer that provided multiple meals, not just one hamburger helper meal, right? Multiple meals for his family. And
wow.
I don't know where George is today, but I'd imagine if we call him, I think he'd probably reflect on that same experience the same way you do. Certainly same with Bruce. Is how impactful that is when you zoom out and realize the bigger picture here, right? Like, we're living on borrowed time and we get caught up in some really silly things sometimes. And when you look at what's important, it is just putting a hand out and serving somebody else and saying, how can I help you? And watching that unfold.
I keep telling Brittany to quit making me tell that story because I break up every time. And this was probably 10 or 12 years ago that this happened. But
Yeah.
It's a pretty powerful story.
I think it's everything. I mean, I think it's the reason why our program should exist, not only in Kansas, but across the country, because there are a lot of Bruces out there. There are a lot of Georges out there who are longing for that opportunity and those resources. And we've got the opportunity to give it to them.
So what I heard between that relationship and the program facilitating that is Bruce was able to sow in value to George at a level that nobody else in his world was able to do, first of all. Second of all, I would imagine that George harvesting that deer or any other, whatever other animals went in the freezer to provide for the family went a long way towards breaking the poverty cycle mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And more than that, probably, I would hope, move George into a place of saying, wow, I've been able to be trusted with these kind of experiences. This level of value has been sowed into me, and how can I pass that on?
Mm-hmm.
So when he's older. But to recognize, you know, the people in his world might be doing the best they can with what they've got.
Absolutely.
And this program is so cool because we get to have people that have more resources, more ability, more time to come in, sow into kids who really are starving for it. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, like, they actually also really need some meat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mentoring is such a powerful thing. And again, before I got involved with this program way back when, you know, I had my kids, took them to practice, took care of my kids, coached some little league and some soccer. But until you spend some time with a young boy or young girl in the blind and you hear their stories and you're able to share with them what you have, that mentoring really can make a huge difference in a young man's life, a young girl's life. And I think in today's society, especially, we need to have more and more men step up and more women, everybody, step up and do more mentoring. Give these kids understanding of what can really happen and what they can achieve in the world.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing what a kid can do when they hear, I believe in you, I'm here for you, you know, how can I help you? And that's what, it's not about shooting that big buck. That was great for George. I'm really happy for him, but there's more to that. And I think he probably found a lot of self-confidence in that and has hopefully been able to steward that to somebody else too. That's the bigger thing, right, is making generational impact, you know, potentially breaking cycles of generational poverty, but also generational cycles of serving others. I think we live in a pretty self-serving world. We have social media that, you know, is constantly promoting self-promotion, right? This kind of shakes that tree pretty aggressively and says, no, like, you're going to get out there and you're going to go sit with somebody in a blind and you're just going to be there for them without anything else, making noise in the background.
Yeah. So both Liam and Colson got their first deer last year.
Yeah.
And we're still eating that meat.
Love it.
Actually, we looked at the freezer again. I really got to defrost it because some of it's getting, like, frozen into the bottom.
Yes.
I don't know. Anyways, that might be challenging. But we looked at it this year and we're like, okay, do we want to go deer hunt? It was like, we still have all this deer from last year,
right,
from the 2 you got. And they're like, no, we want to go try, hunting for geese this year. And so that's what we're going to try to do for ourselves. But they get so much pride when they're like, well, I think this one's my deer. I think it's my deer tonight.
That's my bird.
Because it's all kind of mixed in there.
Yep.
And we don't really know. But I'm like, yeah, you guys both put meat in the freezer.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, so when Daniel came over and he talked about it, he's like, you guys put meat in the freezer. Mm-hmm. I mean, he really made it a big,
you were a provider.
Exactly. He's like, you're providing for your family. And, not that burden's on their shoulders, but still, I mean, that's a big deal. They're like, it's kind of like, I'm grabbing the mic a moment, but so Liam started doing Rubik's Cubes. He started solving cubes earlier this year. And it started off with, he got a cube for Christmas. And then a couple months later, he's like, hey, Dad, do you think I can do this? But that's what every kid's asking the question.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Do you think I've got what it takes? Mm-hmm. And whether it's a Rubik's Cube or hunting, putting meat in the freezer, stepping up to the plate, hey, Dad, you think I can do this?
Yeah.
And in the time that we spent in the blinds, because we had to spend quite a bit of time, and there was a lot of early drives and a lot of gas burn, but we got it, and man, they were just over the moon. Mm-hmm. But for all the kids that don't get to experience that, let alone somebody they look up to and spend quality time, and this kind of leads into, I guess this does lead into maybe a new segment that we can talk about in this podcast of what does it look like for us to live the best life possible with the time we have left? Because time is limited. We only have so much of it. And when we're sowing time into others, that conveys value in ways that nothing else will.
Right.
So, Mike, what do you do, or what does it look like for you to live the best life possible with the time you have left?
I'm in my 70s now, and people say, hey, are you going to retire? And, I tell them, I don't think I can have this much fun if I retire. So probably not anytime soon. But it's the self-satisfaction that you get from seeing these kids harvest their first deer or shoot a pheasant or catch a bass or have that outdoor experience. That's just, I get to do that all the time and see that all year round. It's just tremendously rewarding being able to help kids have those types of experiences. And I think anybody would express that. I mean, anybody that loves to coach, that's what they do it for. They like seeing those kids succeed. And that's what this mentoring program lets people do. It lets them get out there and help a kid succeed. And we just need to have more and more of that. It does so much for these kids. It builds their self-confidence and their self-worth and all those kind of things that gives them the impetus to go ahead and be successful on their own.
Yeah, I gotta echo that. Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said about serving others. I certainly think that's kind of my angle on that, as well as what can I do today to better the life of somebody else? Whether that be in our camp, which is serving kids, or if it's in my husband's camp, serving young adults with intellectual disabilities, or, even in your role, helping those steward their finances for an impactful future for their families, or in tithing to their church, whatever that looks like, right? It's how can we set our own agenda down and say, Lord, what do you want me to do with this? What do you want me to do with my talent you've given me, the treasures you've given me, to serve others, to make an impact, because we are not going to be here forever. We have a borrowed time, always borrowed time. So I get excited about thinking through that lens every day. I certainly try to.
Yeah. And I have no idea maybe where the answer on this question will land, but Mike, so you named it Pass It On. Did you have a mentor that passed things on to you?
My dad.
Your dad? Okay.
Yep. I had some coaches that were pretty good, but my dad was the one that I looked up to for everything.
Okay.
And a lot of kids don't have that today. When they talk about growing up privileged, I feel like I grew up privileged. We didn't have money, we didn't have a lot of things, but I had a mom and dad that were there all the time. And again, I think that's where mentoring can play such a huge role in today's society, is so many kids don't have that kind of privilege like I did. Mm-hmm. And having a mentor in your life that can help you see what you're capable of, that's a huge thing.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to idolize public figures, right? Like, let's talk about Taylor Swift for a second. When was the last time you opened the internet or turned on the TV and it wasn't talked about? But it's like, man, it's so easy to idolize these people who aren't in our lives. Like, those people aren't interacting in our day-to-day lives. And it's just so important to seek out people who are in person, who can pour into you. And that's exactly what mentorship does. That's exactly what these kids are looking for. So when they finally find that person to do it with them, right, to go in the outdoors, to experience hunting, to disconnect from their phones, it's like, oh, this is a lot. This is deeply rooted. This is not superficial anymore, right? Like, this is a connection I can carry on for a long time.
Travis Kelce's really putting her on the map.
I love it. I had to bring that up. I mean, it was very relevant in today's conversation, I think.
Well, you can't do anything without bringing up Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift.
I am a Chiefs fan. I don't hate Taylor Swift, so I'm just going to camp out in the middle. But I would love to stop hearing about it.
I think my youngest brother, he was actually a Taylor Swift fan, possibly before he was a Chiefs fan.
Okay.
So he's loving this.
He's here for it.
Oh, yeah. I saw that and I sent it to him. He's the first person I thought of. I was like, your dreams come true. They've combined.
You can't go up from here. This is it.
Anyways, back on
what
we showed up to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so great to hear that you grew up with a dad who was present, who sewed into you. I think something that's helpful for me to keep in mind is, how am I showing up to be present for my kids, for my boys, for Ellie, because it's so easy to get sucked into, okay, how can we distract ourselves?
Yep.
How can we do something without really having to do anything? And how can we have a conversation without talking about anything? Mm-hmm. Okay. But it's, whether it's in a blind or even just riding in the car, if we don't listen to music, we can talk, because we're all kind of stuck in the same spot together and within earshot, and that's, so that can get good. But how do we stay present? How do we really sow into those that we should be sowing into, that are looking to us for that? We can stay present in our mindset for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of folks hear about mentoring and they think, gosh, I couldn't do that. I don't have anything to bring to the table. And what they don't understand is it's time. Time is the most important thing. I spent a lot of time. Mike Pierce used to be the writer for the Wichita Eagle Outdoor stuff, and he came along on a bunch of our hunts with us, and he told me once, kids spell love T-I-M-E. Mm. And that really stuck. That's all the mentors are looking to do. Spend some time with these kids. You don't have to be the best deer hunter in the world or the best target shooter in the world. Just spend time with these kids and give them opportunities to find themselves out there.
As Liam highlighted, they actually prefer if they're better than you.
Yeah. Well, I told all the kids that I mentored, I said, as soon as they started shooting better than I did, then I was going to go get another one. So.
Yep. Yep.
That never happened, so they did quite well.
Good. What's one of the biggest questions you get when people are asking you about pass it on?
Probably the biggest question we probably get is twofold about mentorship, and it's usually around not having the confidence to go or commit to that, or being worried about not having enough time to commit, right? And the other one is how are y'all floating your boat? How are y'all funded? What do you do? What are your next steps? How do people like the average Joe to folks like you, Mike, who have sponsored our program, get involved? And I would say those are the biggest questions we field Probably because we do a good job, as you can tell, telling stories about these kids and their experiences.
Yeah, and the whole question about mentorship is just it's just a matter of time. Just come do it.
Yeah.
We're not looking for the greatest hunters in the world. If you don't know how to field dress a deer, come out anyway. We got other volunteers that can help you with that.
Yeah.
So
kids don't need perfect. They need present, like you mentioned. That's
Right.
all they need.
Yep.
One of the most freeing quotes I ever heard about parenting is that you actually only have to get it right like 40% of the time. Seriously, like you only have to not screw up 40% of the time as a parent to raise healthy, adjusted kids. And
That feels pretty good.
it feels awesome.
You couple the other percentage with love, and there's a lot that can be, accomplished there for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
If you just know how to love another little person and, when you screw up, own it, apologize, make amends, don't shove it under the rug.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Sorry, we're talking about all kinds of
No, I think that's super replicable in the mentor space too. I mean, I don't know how many times I've sat there and told kids, I don't know how to answer your question. I'm going to try to look it up or find someone who can answer it for you, whether it be about hunting or about navigating a life crisis, right? Like, I think that's really important that you're transparent and honest with kids.
And they catch that. Mm-hmm. You want kids to be transparent and honest with you?
Yeah.
Well, why don't we start by leading with that?
Yeah, time to be vulnerable, folks. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Talk about where you see this headed. How many states are you in? Like how it's funding limited to some extent,
Right.
But what's the future of Pass It On?
I'm excited about it. I really don't see a ceiling for what we're trying to do. The high school trap shooting program where we started with this thing continues to grow across the country. We haven't even started reaching out to other cohorts out there like the National Archery in the Schools program. There's 1 million kids across the country shooting archery in schools. These kids all have an opportunity to get outdoors. There's a program called Outdoors Tomorrow Foundation that's teaching outdoor adventure classes in schools. Mays High School has one. All of these different organizations have kids that need to have further opportunities to get outdoors. And that's where Pass It On really is making our mark. These kids are trap shooters. Let's give them a chance to get out in the field and go hunting. These kids have done archery. Let's give them a chance to get in the field. These kids have gone through an outdoor adventure class. Let's get them in the field. And we want to give them just as many different opportunities as they want to go. So if they've been deer hunting once and they want to go again, great, let's go again. If they've been pheasant hunting once and they want to go again, we don't have any problems with that. We want to get these kids out as many times as we can. So it's, we see us going into other states and just continuing to grow as fast as financial resources will let us, basically.
Mm-hmm. Do you have more kids than you do have hunts right now?
Not yet.
Not yet.
And that's one of the things that's really stellar about our program.
Yeah.
Our program coordinators are making these opportunities available. And when people hear about our program, they call and say, hey, come hunt my property. I mean, it's really been amazing as our program has grown. We had a guy call us in Southwest Kansas or Southeast Kansas and say, hey, can you get 50 kids down here to hunt deer? 50. I mean, holy. Well, I don't know if I get that many, but
Yes.
50. His property's overrun with deer. And
That's amazing.
Yes. Some depredation issues going on there.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
But we just continue getting more and more opportunities.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Talk about what it looks like for kids or parents to get. So Katie Talby's going to be a guest on the next one I record, which would be, well, it doesn't matter the day of the week, but anyway, so she's coming on next. But I shared your information with her because she had interest. But what are the qualifications for kids to get involved? What do they need to do?
Yeah.
Describe that, because I would hear, if I don't have guns, if I don't have land, if I don't have access, if I don't have experience, I've never done hunter's education myself as a parent. I'm sitting back thinking, I don't even.
Yeah.
That's not attainable, is the first thought through my mind.
Yeah. So what is great about living in modern day and with great technological advancements is hunter education is readily available. So any kids 11 years of age and up We even serve some kids into the college range, depending on their involvement or what their life looks like. But you can take Hunter Ed in person, safehunters.com.
Yep.
.com, safehunters.com. Go there, look up your state. You can get a list of all in-person classes and see if there's availability. If not there, the NRA has done a great job at creating an online platform to where you can take a very interactive, I've walked through it, very interactive online Hunter Ed course and become certified that way. So that, checks off the first qualifying thing that you need to be, right? Hunter Ed certified. And that is a insurance reason. And also, we don't ever want to send a kid out into the field not prepared, right?
Sure.
You don't put a kid on a bicycle without training wheels first. Well, maybe sometimes. There are some kids who excel that way, right? But we're not going to do that for that kiddo. We're not going to do that to the mentor. We're just not going to take on that liability, that kind of situation. But outside of that, looking at our calendar, it's super easy to navigate. You can search for all of the events we have on our calendar by a zip code, so you can see what's in my area within 30 miles.
And that's on your website?
Yeah, outdoormentors.org. Search it. Sign up for it right then and there. It takes about 2 minutes maybe to sign up for an event. And then you put directly in contact with one of our coordinators who's responsible for that event, making sure they know, hey, Mike, we saw you signed up for a upland hunt. Okay, you need this hunting license. You can buy it here. You need this waterfowl stamp or this hip stamp or this deer tag or this turkey tag. Here's how you take all those steps to get that. Oh, you don't have a firearm, that's okay. Because we're going to make sure this is vetted with really good mentors who have resources and things such as ammo, firearms, maybe a blaze orange vest if you don't have one. So we're going to make sure you're taken care of through that whole process.
So this is set up to where they're going to take them under their wing and help them get that done, so long as they're at least 11 with a hunter's ed license or a hunter's education certificate.
Yep.
You're talking about scalability and looking to add new states. What if somebody's like, hey, we've either had an idea similar and you guys have built the platform. You have the program, you're gaining a lot of steam, a lot of reputation. Who should they reach out to if they're like, you know what, I think we can get something going over here?
Give Brittany a call.
Yeah. We're always entertaining conversations. We get emails probably on a weekly basis. Hey, I'm in South Dakota. Y'all have programming plans up here soon? Because I wanna be part of it. We certainly love that. You never know where a conversation will lead. You never know what steps follow after that. So certainly please reach out to us. All of our social media is very engaging. Send us a message on there. We'll get back to you. All of our email addresses and phone numbers are on our website as well too. So you can connect with us pretty directly, pretty quickly.
Awesome. Talk about funding. What are your funding goals and what's that look like?
Yeah, well, we have big funding goals always. So we run a lot of different raffles throughout the year. People ask us this all the time. Where do you get your money, right? Raffles. We host special fundraising events like a sporting clay event, a golf tournament. We're writing grants often, and we're always pitching to folks who are in a corporate sponsor situation, right, where they might need to or want to steward some of their income or revenue and just say, hey, we just like what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing. So we have various items or various avenues we can run down there for donations. We also take just straight donations as well. Like if you have ammo that you're trying to get rid of because you don't have a use for it, or if you have some extra cash flow you ran into and you want to steward that, we'd love to connect with you and just chat with you about what that goes to. Sharing these stories that we're sharing today. I think that's really important. Mike mentioned, roughly $125,000, per program coordinator. So it is a numbers game. If we want to scale and create sustainability, that number just has to keep, increasing. So we're certainly trying to do take an active role and doing a better job at creating that sustainability for us.
Sounds like you're doing a great job pulling all the levers that are available between grant, state funding through the stewardship or the PR dollars, and then corporate sponsorship. And you've got some big corporate sponsors too, right?
We do, yeah. Very thankful for corporate sponsors. Savage Arms, Remington, Federal Ammunition, Walton's Inc., which is here in Wichita. These folks all recognize we're serving a target audience, which are their future customers, which is really great for them because if kids aren't growing up hunting, people don't need to buy Savage Arms anymore. They don't need to buy Remington ammunition. They don't need to buy processing equipment to butcher their own deer at home. So they see the importance of funding organizations like ours, because that is going to fund their future, revenue as well.
Yeah. Target audience.
Yes. Target audience. Buzzword.
Well, Mike, you want to close it up with maybe just sharing something you learned from your best mentor?
Dad was always getting us kids out anytime he could. He was always there for us, and that's what we want to have the mentors to be. Somebody that's there for these kids and can help them show the way in the outdoors. In working with Big Brothers all these years, one of the things that they tell everybody, and that you hear from the mentors, is the mentors get more out of it than the kids do. And that's a true story, folks. When you mentor a kid, when you spend time with them, you're going to get more out of it than the kids do every time. So step up, give us a call.
Awesome. Yeah, actually, I'm about to go ahead to lunch with one of my mentors.
Love it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Brittany and Mike, for everything that you do and all the value you're sowing into tomorrow's leaders and dads and moms and all that. So,
yeah. Well, thanks for creating a platform to share that and for doing what you do.
Yeah. And Brittany, you run a podcast as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right? We didn't even talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I like storytelling. I like talking. I got the gift of gab. So it's called the Great Plains Outdoors Podcast with my co-host, Rob McDonald. And we just share stories all across the Great Plains, whether it be about a national conservation organization or talking to fish biologists who are in charge of breeding trophy walleye in some of the lakes around us. It's a few far and in between, just really good content on there. Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I'll link that in the show note description as well.
Thank you.
Yep. So this has been Mike Proctor with Leading Edge Financial Planning as the sponsor for Real Wealth Podcast just exploring Pass It On Outdoors, outdoor mentors, and let's invest in tomorrow's youth. I'd encourage you to follow the link to donate if you feel so compelled to steward some of your money to help multiply value into tomorrow's youth. And definitely like and subscribe and stay tuned for more episodes.
Yeah.